Have you ever wondered why certain science fiction films simply vanished from television? They were not always officially banned. Some were shortened, renamed, trapped behind ownership problems, buried after failed pilots, or judged too strange for comfortable reruns. Tonight, we are reopening 38 forgotten transmissions that television quietly stopped showing. Before we begin, like this video, share it with another classic science fiction fan, and subscribe to the channel. Number 38. The Love War, 1970. Imagine learning that Earth's future will be decided by a private duel between visitors disguised as ordinary people. Lloyd Bridges plays Kyle, an extraterrestrial soldier sent to represent one side of a distant conflict. Instead of risking an interplanetary war, two alien powers agree that a handful of agents will compete for control of our world. Kyle's mission becomes complicated when he meets Sandy, played by Angie Dickinson, and begins questioning everything he has been ordered to do. The quiet suburban setting makes the danger more disturbing, because no giant ships appear above the city. The enemy could be standing in a kitchen, smiling across a table, or offering help at exactly the wrong moment. Its most memorable sequence arrives when Kyle believes the contest has ended and allows himself to trust Sandy. The final revelation transforms their relationship into a trap and leaves Earth facing a future it never knew was being negotiated. Produced for ABC, the film never became a continuing series, so its unsettling ending slowly disappeared with the era of network television movies. Number 37. The Last Child, 1971. Long before modern dystopian television, this film imagined an America where every couple was permitted only one child. A young husband and wife lose their first baby, but the law still considers their legal birth allowance used. When another pregnancy begins, government officials prepare to take control of the situation. The couple's only hope is to cross into Canada before checkpoints close around them. Van Heflin plays a former senator who decides to help, even though the same society now considers older citizens wasteful and unnecessary. His presence gives the chase emotional weight because he is fighting for more than one family. He is resisting a system that reduces every life to a calculation. The famous border sequence turns the story into a tense road thriller as patrols close in and medical help becomes harder to find. Nothing looks dramatically futuristic, and that is what makes the film frightening. Its streets, cars, hospitals, and officials resemble the early 70s. Originally created for television, it faded when network movies stopped receiving regular reruns, leaving its warning about population control almost completely forgotten. You have already seen two films television nearly forgot. Subscribe now and tell us which lost 70s movie first made you uncomfortable. Keep watching, because the stories ahead become stranger, darker, and much harder to explain. Number 36. The Mind of Mr. Soames, 1970. What happens when a grown man wakes with the emotional experience of a newborn? Terrence Stamp plays John Soames, a patient who has spent his entire life in a coma. Doctors finally develop a procedure capable of awakening him, but their success creates a moral disaster. Soames has an adult body, yet he cannot walk, speak, understand rules, or control his terror. One physician treats him like a scientific project that must progress on schedule. Another believes patience and kindness matter more than impressive results. Their disagreement turns Soames into the center of an argument about whether medicine has rescued a person or merely activated an experiment. A memorable scene shows him discovering food and simple objects, while cameras record every reaction. The laboratory feels less like a hospital than a polished prison. When Soames escapes, freedom becomes frightening because nobody has prepared him for traffic, suspicion, or cruelty. Terrence Stamp makes each confused gesture painful to watch. Its thoughtful pace and documentary-like mood never fitted comfortably beside louder science fiction, so years of limited television exposure turned it into a film many viewers remembered only as a disturbing idea. Number 35. The Resurrection of Zachary Wheeler, 1971. A senator is badly injured in a car crash, disappears from the hospital, and is soon declared dead. Reporter Harry Walsh, played by Leslie Nielsen, knows something is wrong because he personally recorded the wounded politician being removed from the wreckage. Medical files become difficult to locate, witnesses avoid questions, and no ordinary funeral explanation makes sense. His investigation leads to an isolated facility where powerful citizens are secretly preserved through biological duplicates. These human copies are not raised for freedom. They exist as perfect sources of compatible organs and tissue whenever their wealthy originals become sick or injured. One of the film's strongest moments comes when Walsh sees what appears to be Senator Wheeler, alive after the public has already accepted his death. That single image proves the conspiracy extends far beyond one accident. Angie Dickinson and Bradford Dillman helped turn the mystery into a cold political thriller rather than a traditional monster story. The ending refuses to explain everything neatly, leaving viewers unsure whether the secret has been exposed or protected. Produced using an unusual videotape-to-film process, it often looked visually rough in later broadcasts, and limited distribution pushed its cloning nightmare toward obscurity. Number 34. The Ground Star Conspiracy, 1972. A massive explosion destroys a secret research center, leaving one badly injured survivor with no memory of who he is. Government security agents do not treat him like a victim. They immediately suspect that he caused the destruction. Michael Sarrazin plays John Wells, the mysterious survivor, while George Peppard becomes Tucson, a relentless investigator convinced that Wells knows more than he admits. The problem is that Wells genuinely cannot remember his past, his loyalties, or why he was found near the ruined facility. Harsh interrogations force fragments of memory to return, but every recovered detail could be real, planted, or deliberately distorted. The standout sequence involves a psychological procedure designed to push information back into his mind. Images and questions arrive faster than he can process them, making him distrust his own thoughts. What begins as a Cold War espionage story slowly reveals experiments involving identity and transferred knowledge. Wells may not simply have forgotten himself. Part of someone else may be living inside him. The film's mixture of spy drama and speculative science made it difficult to market, so scattered television appearances left many viewers remembering disconnected images without remembering the title. Number 33. The Stone Tape, 1972. Inside a decaying Victorian building, a research team believes it has discovered a revolutionary recording system. The walls themselves may be storing sounds and images from the past. Written by Nigel Neal, this British television production follows scientists developing a superior audio medium inside an old mansion. One room remains empty because workers refuse to enter it. Engineer Jill Greeley soon hears a woman screaming and sees a shadowy figure on a staircase. Team leader Peter Brock refuses a supernatural explanation. He believes the stone absorbed a violent emotional event and now replays it for sensitive minds. The best-known sequence shows scientists filling the chamber with equipment and trying to force the hidden recording to reveal itself. Their machines detect almost nothing, yet Jill's terror grows stronger. Technology does not protect her. It encourages Brock to push further. A later discovery suggests the scream is not the oldest thing trapped inside the walls. The team may have awakened layers of fear recorded across centuries. Broadcast by the BBC during Christmas, the production became deeply influential, but its limited repeat exposure made it feel lost to generations who heard people describe its horror without ever seeing the full film. Number 32. The Stranger, 1973. Astronaut Neil Stryker crashes on a planet that looks almost exactly like Earth. There are roads, hospitals, governments, and ordinary families, but the night sky contains two moons. Glenn Corbett plays Stryker, who awakens under the control of officials claiming they want to help him. Their society appears orderly, yet constant surveillance and controlled information reveal an authoritarian system. Anyone questioning the government risks being labeled unstable or dangerous. Stryker learns that he has reached a parallel Earth called Terra. Its leaders fear that proof of another world could weaken their authority, so they plan to silence him while studying his spacecraft. His only possible ally is Dr. Bettina Cook, a woman who slowly accepts that his impossible story may be true. A particularly effective scene comes when Stryker looks through a window and sees both moons. Until that moment, even he wonders whether the crash damaged his mind. The image confirms that he is trapped somewhere that should not exist. Designed as a possible television pilot, the story ends with unanswered questions. The series never arrived, and later retitling made the film even harder for viewers to identify. Number 31. The Questor Tapes, 1974. Scientists assemble an android from instructions left by the missing Dr. Vaslovic. Half of its programming has been damaged, yet the machine wakes with one clear purpose. It must find the person who created it. Robert Foxworth plays Questor, an artificial man who looks human but does not fully understand human behavior. Mike Farrell is Jerry Robinson, the engineer forced to travel with him. Questor is not a mechanical villain. He is intelligent, polite, curious, and unexpectedly funny. His missing memory makes him vulnerable because he possesses remarkable abilities without knowing why they were given to him. The most remembered sequence shows Questor completing his own unfinished body after human scientists fail to activate him. Once alive, he calmly leaves the laboratory, proving that his makers never controlled the project. The search reveals that android observers have quietly guided humanity for centuries, preventing civilization from destroying itself. Questor is intended to replace the previous Guardian, but he must first decide whether humanity deserves protection. Gene Roddenberry hoped the movie would launch a series. When that plan collapsed, Questor's larger mission ended almost immediately, leaving this thoughtful artificial intelligence story stranded outside normal syndication. Number 30. Where Have All the People Gone? 1974. After spending hours inside a cave, a father and his children return to the surface and discover empty roads, abandoned houses, and clothing lying where people once stood. A mysterious solar event has apparently reduced most of humanity to white powder. Peter Graves plays Stephen Anders, who leads his children across a suddenly silent California. Their first goal is to locate the children's mother, but each mile reveals another sign that the familiar world has ended. Cars sit without drivers. Shops remain filled with goods. Radios provide almost no useful information. Even surviving animals behave unpredictably. One unforgettable sequence takes place inside a small store where the family is surrounded by aggressive dogs. The animals are not giant mutants, yet their changed behavior proves that the disaster has affected more than human bodies. Stephen must protect his family without knowing whether any safe community remains. They eventually meet other survivors, raising a difficult question. Should limited supplies be shared, or has survival already become an individual struggle? The ending offers a little hope, but leaves the greater disaster unresolved, almost as though the film were opening a series that never came. Without a continuation, its empty clothing images became a half-remembered television nightmare. Number 29. A Cold Night's Death, 1973. Two researchers reach an isolated Arctic laboratory after radio contact with the previous team suddenly stops. Inside, they find damaged rooms, abandoned equipment, and disturbing evidence that something has been moving through the station. Robert Culp and Eli Wallach play the scientists sent to investigate. At first, they suspect mechanical failure or violence between the missing researchers. As temperatures fall, the building seems to turn against them. Supplies move. Doors are left open. Radio equipment behaves strangely. Their personalities begin to clash as one demands rational explanations, and the other becomes convinced that an unseen presence is studying them. Isolation magnifies every sound until even a ventilation duct feels threatening. The signature moment arrives when they examine evidence involving the station's test animals. The material suggests those animals may be far more intelligent than expected, and possibly capable of organized behavior. Suddenly, every unexplained movement becomes part of an experiment in which the humans may be the subjects. The movie avoids large creatures and elaborate effects. Its fear comes from watching two educated men lose confidence in their own superiority. Because it was made for television and rarely circulated afterward, many viewers remembered only the snowbound station and the final revelation. Number 28. Killdozer, 1974. A construction crew working on a remote island uncovers a strange blue object buried beneath ancient rock. When their bulldozer strikes it, an invisible energy enters the machine. From that moment, an ordinary piece of heavy equipment becomes a patient and nearly unstoppable hunter. Clint Walker plays Lloyd Kelly, the crew supervisor, who first assumes the accidents around the site are caused by carelessness or mechanical failure. That explanation becomes impossible when the bulldozer begins moving without a driver, blocking escape routes and crushing anything placed in its path. The film's most famous scene shows the machine sitting silently while the surviving men watch from a distance. Nothing about it looks supernatural. The engine simply starts, the blade rises, and the vehicle turns toward them as though it has been listening. That slow movement gives the machine more personality than a talking villain. The men try explosives, traps, and another construction vehicle, but the alien force seems able to anticipate every attack. Because the island has limited equipment and no immediate rescue, each damaged truck or radio removes another possible escape. The final confrontation turns an industrial worksite into a mechanical arena, as Kelly uses electricity and raw nerve against the possessed bulldozer. The title became an easy joke, yet the film's simple idea works because the threat is believable in weight and movement. It was originally made for television, but later broadcasters often treated it as disposable camp. Once network movie reruns declined, the sight of a driverless bulldozer stalking men across an empty island became something viewers remembered more clearly than the film's actual name. Number 27. The UFO Incident, 1975. Instead of presenting alien visitors through ray weapons and enormous motherships, this television film builds its mystery through damaged memory. James Earl Jones and Estelle Parsons portray Barney and Betty Hill, the real married couple who reported a strange encounter while driving through New Hampshire in 1961. Their journey begins with an unusual light following their car. Barney tries to explain it as an aircraft, planet, or satellite, but the object appears to change direction and move closer whenever they stop. After reaching home, the couple realizes part of the night is missing from their memories. Their watches have stopped, marks appear on the car, and both begin experiencing anxiety they cannot explain. Nightmares eventually lead them to a psychiatrist, who uses hypnosis to explore what may have happened during the missing time. The film carefully moves between testimony and uncertain visual fragments, never demanding that the audience accept every image as proven fact. Its most famous scene belongs to James Earl Jones. During hypnosis, Barney remembers looking through binoculars and seeing figures inside the object. His controlled voice suddenly breaks as fear overwhelms him, creating a moment more disturbing than an elaborate alien costume. Betty's description of a star map and the couple's matching memories deepen the mystery without closing it. The original broadcast attracted attention during the 70s UFO craze, but the film's quiet, psychological style did not fit later programming built around faster invasions. As a result, one of television's strongest alien encounter dramas gradually became far harder to see than the sensational stories it inspired. Number 26. The Noah, 1975. One soldier may be the final human being alive, stranded on an island after a global conflict has destroyed civilization. With nobody left to speak to, Noah begins creating companions inside his own mind. Robert Strauss carries nearly the entire film as the exhausted survivor. At first, he establishes routines, searches the beach, repairs shelter, and tries to convince himself that rescue remains possible. Days stretch into months, and the silence begins damaging his understanding of what is real. He invents an unseen servant named Friday, partly because the familiar literary reference gives his loneliness a structure. Friday's voice offers conversation, but Noah quickly turns him into a subordinate who must obey orders. Later, he creates Friday Ann, hoping that affection and family life will make the imaginary community complete. Instead of healing him, these relationships reproduce jealousy, class divisions, prejudice, and arguments. The film's defining scenes show Noah passionately speaking to people the audience never sees. His expressions reveal when they have insulted him, questioned his rules, or refused to cooperate. The empty island slowly feels crowded with invisible citizens. Noah eventually creates laws, rituals, history, and punishment for a society that exists only inside his head. He becomes its ruler, prophet, judge, and prisoner. The story's cruel suggestion is that even the final human being might recreate the same systems that helped destroy humanity. Filmed on an extremely limited scale and held back before receiving scattered exposure, the movie looked unlike commercial science fiction of its time. Its nearly one-man structure, political symbolism, and unsettling conclusion made it difficult for broadcasters to schedule, so this lonely apocalypse almost vanished completely. Number 25. Idaho Transfer, 1973. Deep inside an underground research facility, young volunteers are secretly transported decades into the future. Scientists believe an environmental disaster will make their own era unlivable, so the travelers are sent ahead to preserve the possibility of human survival. Peter Fonda directs the story without turning time travel into a colorful adventure. The transfer machine resembles improvised laboratory equipment, and every journey feels uncomfortable, uncertain, and physically dangerous. Because only young bodies can survive the process, the volunteers are separated from parents, teachers, and nearly everyone capable of explaining what the project truly intends. In the future, they find empty roads, abandoned structures, and vast stretches of Idaho wilderness. Humanity appears to be gone. The film's most haunting passage follows the group walking through black volcanic terrain under an open sky. There are no silver cities or advanced machines, only rock, wind, and silence. The future looks prehistoric, as though time has erased modern life and returned the land to an earlier age. The travelers begin forming relationships and discussing children, believing they have been selected to rebuild the species. Yet clues suggest their understanding may be dangerously incomplete. Food becomes scarce, loyalties shift, and the experiment's leaders in the past may not be telling everyone the same story. The final encounter introduces an image so strange that it changes the meaning of the mission. These young people may not be heroic founders at all. They may be part of a biological process they never understood. Its restrained acting and unresolved conclusion made the film a poor fit for conventional television blocks. For many viewers, it survived as a few eerie images from a late-night broadcast rather than a complete remembered story. Number 24. The Clones, 1973. A university scientist suddenly finds himself pursued by federal agents, criminals, and a man who looks exactly like him. The explanation leads to a cloning experiment operating far beyond public oversight. Michael Green plays Dr. Gerald Appleby, whose normal life collapses when strangers begin treating him as somebody else. He discovers that a duplicate has been created from his genetic material and shaped for a covert purpose. The clone is not viewed as a person by the organization responsible. He is equipment, replaceable, trainable, and useful for missions where identity matters more than survival. Much of the story unfolds as an urban chase. Appleby moves through laboratories, apartments, roadside rooms, and secret meeting places while trying to identify which officials are protecting him and which are steering him toward another trap. The defining sequence arrives when the original and the duplicate finally confront each other. Their matching faces create immediate confusion, but their behavior reveals how memory and experience separate two genetically identical men. One has relationships, habits, and fear. The other has been given instructions and a manufactured reason to exist. The conspiracy grows until even the audience begins questioning whether the man being followed is truly the original. Every apparent rescue could be another exchange. Every body might be replaceable. Made before cloning became a dependable screen subject, the film lacked the polished visual design that later productions brought to similar ideas. Its modest budget and complicated distribution reduced television interest. More expensive movies eventually received attention for concepts this forgotten thriller had already explored, leaving The Clones buried like one of its own disposable identities. Number 23. Chosen Survivors, 1974. Without warning, 11 strangers are taken from their homes and flown to a secret shelter deep beneath the desert. Government officials tell them that a nuclear war has begun and that a computer selected each person for the skills needed to rebuild civilization. The group includes doctors, engineers, scientists, and other citizens considered valuable to humanity's future. Their underground home contains food, living quarters, medical equipment, and a reactor designed to keep them alive for years. The arrangement seems carefully planned until creatures begin entering through the ventilation system. The shelter was constructed inside a natural cave network, occupied by enormous colonies of vampire bats. At first, the attacks seem manageable. Then thousands of animals begin striking lights, wiring, air ducts, and anyone caught outside a protected room. One of the film's most remembered sequences traps survivors inside a transparent elevator, while bats swarm around the glass. The modern structure built to protect humanity from nuclear destruction suddenly feels fragile against the natural world underneath it. Fear also exposes divisions within the group. Some want to remain disciplined, while others question why their families were abandoned and why no direct evidence of war has reached them. A darker possibility emerges. The supposed attack may have been staged, and the entire shelter could be a government experiment designed to measure how selected citizens behave under pressure. If that is true, every death has occurred for data rather than survival. Its combination of atomic paranoia, animal horror, and social experiment confused the film's identity. After occasional late-night broadcasts, it became far less visible than the disaster pictures surrounding it. Number 22. The Alpha Incident, 1978. A microorganism collected during a mission to Mars is transported across the United States by train. When a railway employee accidentally opens its container, 5 people are sealed inside a small rural station and ordered to remain awake. The alien organism becomes active when an infected person falls asleep. Scientists outside search for a treatment while the trapped group fights exhaustion, suspicion, and the growing certainty that officials may sacrifice them to protect the wider population. Ralph Meeker plays Charlie, an older railway worker caught between frightened travelers and distant authorities speaking through telephones. The others include a salesman, a young woman, and workers who react to quarantine with anger rather than cooperation. Nobody knows exactly who has been exposed, and every yawn becomes a warning. One notorious sequence follows a man who can no longer keep his eyes open. The remaining characters shake him, shout at him, and force him to walk, knowing what sleep may trigger. The film relies on anticipation rather than displaying every physical detail, allowing the audience to imagine what the organism does inside the body. As the night continues, arguments become as dangerous as contamination. Some demand that the doors be opened. Others insist that escape could spread the organism across the country. Even surviving until morning may not guarantee freedom, because the government views everyone inside as a biological risk. Produced with a confined setting and limited resources, the film looked smaller than its ambitious premise. Its deeply pessimistic ending and uncomfortable quarantine story made it unlikely material for repeated television, allowing this Martian infection to disappear into regional horror memory. Number 21. Welcome to Blood City, 1977. Five strangers awaken in a desert with no memory of how they arrived. Cards in their pockets identify them as convicted criminals, yet none can remember committing a crime. Soon they reach a frontier settlement where violence determines social rank and every newcomer begins as somebody else's property. Keir Dalia plays Lewis, the most determined of the group, who tries to understand Blood City's rules before those rules destroy him. New arrivals become servants unless they defeat a citizen. Anyone accumulating enough victories earns the title of Killmaster, gaining comfort, influence, and freedom to dominate weaker residents. Jack Palance controls the town as Sheriff Friedlander, a smiling authority figure who treats cruelty as ordinary entertainment. His relaxed manner makes the system more disturbing because he never behaves as though anything unusual is happening. The standout scene arrives when Lewis begins noticing errors around him. Conversations repeat, personalities shift without explanation, and the landscape seems limited to locations designed for confrontation. Blood City is eventually revealed as a computerized environment where human subjects are being observed. Scientists outside the simulation use the Western setting to measure aggression, leadership, loyalty, and survival instinct. The citizens are not building a real community. They are pieces inside a psychological test. Lewis must decide whether escaping the town means entering freedom or simply reaching another controlled level. The film combined Western costumes with virtual reality science fiction long before that mixture became familiar. Audiences and programmers struggled to classify it, while uneven distribution weakened its reach. Later productions explored simulated worlds with larger budgets, but this dusty experiment was already asking whether violence appears naturally or only when a system rewards it. Number 20. The Last Dinosaur, 1977. Millionaire hunter Maston Thrust has conquered nearly every challenge modern life can offer. When scientists discover a warm prehistoric valley hidden beneath the polar ice, he sees one final opportunity to prove that he remains the toughest man alive. Richard Boone plays Thrust with enormous confidence and visible sadness. He leads a small expedition through the Earth's crust inside a drilling vehicle called the Polar Borer. The team emerges in a lost world containing dinosaurs, primitive humans, and dangers that modern equipment cannot easily control. The scientists want knowledge, but Thrust wants a trophy. His obsession centers on a Tyrannosaurus Rex that attacks their camp, steals equipment, and repeatedly escapes his weapons. The movie's famous spectacle is a battle between the Tyrannosaurus and a Triceratops. Suit-based creatures push, bite, and stumble across the valley with the physical energy of a Japanese monster production. The effects may appear theatrical today, but the performers give the animals weight and personality. Beneath the adventure lies a more interesting story about age. Thrust gradually recognizes that he resembles the creatures he wants to conquer. He is another survivor from an older world, refusing to admit that modern society no longer values his methods. His final choice turns the expedition into something unexpectedly melancholy. Planned for theatrical release in the United States, the film instead appeared on television in an edited form, while Japan received a longer cinema version. That divided history left it caught between categories. It was too elaborate to be remembered as an ordinary TV movie, yet too rarely shown in its complete form to become a major dinosaur classic. Number 19. The Shape of Things to Come, 1979. After nuclear disaster devastates Earth, surviving humans establish colonies on the moon. Their continued existence depends on an anti-radiation medicine produced on the distant world of Delta 3. When the supply is seized by the power-hungry Omus, an unauthorized rescue mission becomes humanity's only chance. Jack Palance plays Omus with operatic delight, commanding robot soldiers and threatening lunar settlements from a fortress packed with flashing machinery. Barry Morse appears as Dr. Cabal, who travels with his son, a young pilot, and a loyal robot called Sparks. The heroes cross space in a battle cruiser, while Omus prepares automated ships to strike the moon's protective domes. His objective is not simply control of the medicine. He wants the remaining human population to accept him as its ruler. One memorable scene shows Omus addressing rows of machines like a grand emperor, while Sparks responds to danger with almost childlike bravery. That contrast captures the film's peculiar appeal. Serious actors perform inside a colorful production that never hesitates to become strange. Despite using H.G. Wells's name, the story has very little connection to his original book or the celebrated 1936 adaptation. It belongs instead to the rush of space adventures that followed Star Wars. combining lunar colonies, robots, radiation, and laser battles with a distinctly Canadian scale. Television channels briefly used such films to fill weekend schedules, but expectations changed quickly. Once programmers could obtain better-known studio blockbusters, this smaller lunar rebellion looked dated and disappeared. Its title survived, yet many viewers who remembered Sparks or Palance's speeches never realized which film they had actually seen. Number 18. Ravagers, 1979. Across the ruins of post-apocalyptic America, a survivor named Falk avoids settlements and refuses to trust anyone. His caution fails when wandering scavengers destroy the small life he has built, forcing him back into a world he wanted to leave behind. Richard Harris plays Falk as an exhausted, bitter man rather than a polished action hero. He moves through abandoned factories, damaged military installations, rusting transport yards, and communities living on fragments of the old civilization. After joining a group of peaceful refugees, Falk learns that they hope to reach a rumored safe region. He doubts the place exists, yet continuing alone offers little more than slow defeat. His practical instincts clash with their belief that cooperation can restore something human. The film's strongest quality is its use of real industrial locations. Broken machinery, empty buildings, and neglected launch equipment create a future that looks genuinely abandoned rather than carefully decorated. A haunting passage inside a decaying space facility suggests that the technology once designed to carry humanity toward the stars has become useless shelter. The Ravagers eventually return, forcing Falk to decide whether he will continue running or defend people who still believe he can help them. That decision matters more than defeating a gang. It asks whether survival without loyalty has any value. The movie arrived when audiences increasingly expected science fiction to move quickly and look spectacular. Its mournful pace, sparse dialogue, and damaged landscapes offered something colder. Television programmers rarely returned to a film that treated the end of civilization as grief instead of adventure. As a result, its remarkable locations vanished from schedules even while cheaper wasteland pictures remained in circulation. Number 17. The Daytime Ended, 1979. A family arrives at a newly built solar-powered house in the California desert, expecting a quiet reunion. Instead, strange lights appear above the property. Small creatures enter the rooms, and the surrounding landscape begins shifting between dimensions. Jim Davis plays Grant, the family patriarch, who tries to protect everyone while admitting that none of the events obey normal logic. His young granddaughter first encounters a tiny glowing visitor inside the house. The creature appears gentle, but its arrival opens the door to something much larger. Unidentified craft circle the property. Energy fields trap family members. Stop-motion monsters battle near the buildings, and doorways seem to lead into places that did not exist moments earlier. The signature sequence unfolds during the night when two alien creatures fight in the desert while spacecraft exchange beams overhead. The family can do almost nothing except hide and watch reality break apart. Handmade models and animation give the spectacle the quality of a child's science fiction nightmare suddenly becoming physical. Unlike a conventional invasion story, no commander explains what the aliens want. Several unrelated cosmic forces appear to be colliding around one ordinary household. By morning, the house and everyone inside have apparently been transported to another world. Enormous structures rise in the distance, but the film offers almost no explanation of where they are or why they were chosen. That refusal to solve the mystery became part of the fascination. It also made the picture difficult to promote. Frequently associated with conflicting release information and circulated through weak television prints, the movie became a collection of remembered images: the glowing child's visitor, the desert monsters, and a family staring at a world that should not be there. Number 16. Parts. The Clonus Horror, 1979. Inside an isolated community called Clonus, healthy young adults train for the day they will be selected to visit America. They believe selection is a reward for discipline and physical excellence. In reality, every resident is a clone, created to provide replacement organs for a wealthy person outside. Tim Donnelly plays Richard, a curious resident who notices that the rules do not fit together. Nobody remembers childhood. Questions about the wider world are discouraged. Friends chosen during cheerful ceremonies leave and never communicate again. Richard discovers a discarded product package, showing the face of a public figure who looks exactly like one of the residents. The object proves that another society exists, and that everyone inside Clonus has an original. The most disturbing sequence follows a selection celebration. Staff members smile, music plays, and the chosen residents feel honored, while technicians quietly prepare them for medical use. Their innocence makes the system more frightening, because they cannot understand that the promised paradise is their death. Richard escapes and reaches the outside world, where a retired journalist agrees to investigate. Their evidence leads toward a politically powerful family benefiting from the program. Officials then face a familiar choice: expose the crime or protect the people who profit from it. The film was created for a fraction of the budget later productions used for similar stories. Its rough surfaces limited television demand, but the moral question remains sharp. Does a copy possess full human rights if society created that person for spare parts? More expensive films would later explore nearly the same premise with greater publicity, while Clonus itself remained buried like one of the identities its administrators tried to erase. Number 15. The Visitor, 1979. An ancient struggle between cosmic forces reaches Earth through a young girl named Katie. Her mother possesses a rare genetic ability, and a secret organization wants her to produce another child capable of strengthening a destructive alien bloodline. Nothing in this film unfolds normally. John Huston appears as an elderly visitor sent to protect humanity. Franco Nero plays a distant spiritual figure surrounded by children. Lance Henriksen is the mother's boyfriend, whose romantic attention hides a mission connected to the organization. Shelley Winters becomes an unexpectedly fierce guardian. Katie can influence people, animals, and objects, and her behavior grows more dangerous as pressure on her mother increases. Flocks of birds gather whenever the child's power becomes active, turning ordinary locations into sudden zones of chaos. The film's best-known sequence takes place at an ice skating rink. Katie causes another child to spin uncontrollably, while music, colored lights, and horrified spectators transform the arena into a surreal nightmare. Later moments involving a wheelchair, a firearm, attacking birds, and a basketball game make the story even harder to classify. The large cast suggests a prestigious production, but the plot combines religious symbolism, alien mythology, psychic power, conspiracy, and family drama without explaining every connection. That confusion became worse when American distributors shortened and rearranged the film. Television viewers often encountered versions that felt like pieces from several different movies. For years, The Visitor survived mainly through stories about its bizarre scenes. Later restorations revealed a richer visual design, but its original disappearance shows how quickly an unusual film can be buried when distributors decide audiences need something simpler. Number 14. Message from Space, 1978. The peaceful world of Gelucia has been conquered by the Gavana's empire. With defeat approaching, its leaders send 8 glowing seeds into space, trusting that each seed will select a warrior capable of joining the resistance. The chosen people are not disciplined heroes waiting for a noble mission. They include reckless pilots, a wealthy thrill-seeker, a disgraced general, and several individuals who initially care more about personal escape than Gelucia's suffering. Kinji Fukasaku directs the adventure with enormous energy. Spaceships dive like fighter aircraft, armored troops storm castles, and glowing objects guide characters across planets that seem drawn from both samurai legends and comic books. Sonny Chiba appears as Prince Hans, while Vic Morrow plays General Garuda, a weary veteran searching for one final honorable purpose. The most memorable spectacle arrives during the assault on the Gavana fortress. Miniature ships race through explosions while ground fighters use sword-like weapons against soldiers in heavy armor. The sequence openly competes with Star Wars, yet its emotional rhythm and visual chaos remain unmistakably Japanese. Because it reached many markets after George Lucas's blockbuster, reviewers dismissed it as a copy and ignored the folk story structure behind the sacred seeds. Television stations later used pan and scan prints for weekend science fiction slots, cutting away much of the widescreen design. As those prints faded, the film looked cheaper and more confusing than it had in theaters. Newer space franchises eventually replaced it, leaving viewers with memories of glowing walnuts, wild spacecraft, and Vic Morrow commanding a battle they could no longer name. Number 13. Star Crash, 1978. Smuggler Stella Star and her companion Acton are captured by Imperial forces and offered freedom in exchange for a dangerous mission. They must locate the Emperor's missing son and discover a weapon powerful enough to threaten the galaxy. Caroline Munro plays Stella, with complete confidence, even when the story sends her through frozen planets, floating cities, prison mines, and battles against giant machines. Marjo Gortner's Acton possesses unexplained abilities that appear whenever the plot needs them, while a robot named Elle comments on danger in a cheerful country accent. Christopher Plummer gives the Emperor remarkable dignity, delivering commands as though the surrounding madness were perfectly reasonable. David Hasselhoff appears later as Prince Simon, The Missing Heir. The sequence most viewers remember features an enormous metal woman coming to life and attacking Stella. Stop-motion animation makes the statue swing a sword and pursue her across a platform, creating an image far more distinctive than its brief screen time suggests. Other scenes involve torpedoes carrying soldiers, cave people, ray weapons, and a city designed to be destroyed by a direct collision. Nothing remains restrained for long. Every new location introduces another costume, creature, superpower, or impossible escape. Critics rejected the movie as a shameless attempt to benefit from the space opera craze, but television gave it a second life as colorful weekend entertainment. When broadcasters began favoring polished studio franchises, its models and painted stars looked too old-fashioned for regular rotation. Stella Star survived through cult tapes and midnight screenings, but the casual television audience that once discovered her almost disappeared. Number 12. Damnation Alley, 1977. After a nuclear exchange knocks Earth away from its normal axis, violent storms, floods, and altered animals make most of the United States nearly impossible to cross. A small military group receives a weak radio transmission from Albany and begins a desperate journey inside two heavily armored vehicles. George Peppard plays Major Denton, the disciplined commander who believes reaching other survivors will give their lives purpose. Jan Michael Vincent is Tanner, a rebellious former officer who wants freedom more than responsibility. Their conflict gives the journey a human edge because neither man can survive without the other. The real star is the Landmaster, a 12-wheeled machine designed to cross water, climb debris, and remain stable over broken ground. Its rotating wheel assemblies and armored shell provide a physical centerpiece more convincing than many of the optical effects around it. A notorious sequence traps the travelers inside a deserted city filled with aggressive cockroaches. What begins as a search for supplies becomes a frantic escape as the insects pour through rooms, cover victims, and swarm across the streets. Later, an enormous electrical storm lifts vehicles and twists the sky into unnatural colors. The expedition also meets isolated survivors whose behavior reveals different responses to the end of society. 20th Century Fox spent considerable time trying to improve the effects, but the movie reached theaters after Star Wars had transformed audience expectations. Its disappointing release led to television exposure, where cropped prints and uneven versions weakened its scale. Rights and restoration complications later made the proper widescreen film difficult to encounter. The Landmaster remained famous, but the movie carrying it slowly vanished from the channels that had once kept it alive. Number 11. The Ultimate Warrior, 1975. In a ruined New York City, food has become more valuable than money. Small settlements protect rooftop gardens, while violent gangs control the surrounding streets. Max von Sydow plays the Baron, leader of a community, attempting to preserve seeds, medicine, knowledge, and a fragile form of social order. Yul Brynner is Carson, a highly skilled fighter hired to defend the settlement from a gang commanded by the ruthless Carrot. Carson speaks little and watches everything. He quickly understands that the community cannot survive forever because crops are failing, supplies are shrinking, and its enemies grow stronger each week. The Baron eventually gives him a more important mission: escort his pregnant daughter to a distant island where uncontaminated land may still exist. One of the film's strongest scenes unfolds in a crowded street market. Desperate citizens trade scraps while armed guards scan rooftops, and potential employers demonstrate what they can offer Carson. Without lengthy explanation, the sequence shows how completely the old economy has disappeared. Later, Carson and the woman escape through abandoned subway tunnels, as Carrot follows them underground. The final chase becomes more than a fight between two dangerous men. Carson protects the possibility of a future, while Carrot represents survival based entirely on taking from others. The stripped-down action and grim locations arrived before post-apocalyptic cinema became a dependable television category. Later wasteland films offered louder vehicles, stranger costumes, and faster violence. This quieter story of seeds, pregnancy, and responsibility was pushed aside. Once Yul Brynner's less famous titles stopped receiving routine broadcasts, The Ultimate Warrior became another future New York that television seemed to seal beneath the streets. Number 10. ZPG, 1972. Pollution has poisoned the air, crowds have overwhelmed cities, and the world government announces a 30-year prohibition on childbirth. Couples are encouraged to purchase robotic children instead, while anyone hiding a real pregnancy faces severe punishment. Geraldine Chaplin and Oliver Reed play Carol and Russ, a married couple living beneath enormous pollution domes. Carol secretly stops taking government medication because she cannot accept a future in which parenthood has been replaced by obedience. When she becomes pregnant, the couple hides the baby inside their apartment and constructs increasingly dangerous lies. Their neighbors, George and Edna, discover the secret. Instead of reporting them immediately, they demand to share the child. What begins as a frightened agreement becomes a struggle over who has the right to act as the baby's parents. A famous scene takes place inside a department store displaying robotic children. Mechanical babies cry, smile, and respond to programmed adults, while salespeople describe them as perfect substitutes. The sequence is absurd, commercial, and deeply sad because everyone must pretend machinery has solved a human loss. Government announcements repeat that reproduction is selfish. Transparent punishment domes descend over suspected violators, making social policy a visible instrument of terror. The film's subject was tied to early 70s fears about overpopulation and ecological collapse. When public discussion shifted, broadcasters treated the story as dated rather than unsettlingly relevant. Its title was also difficult to remember and explain in schedules. Edited television versions often softened the harsher implications, while complete prints became uncommon. The robotic nursery and polluted city survived in viewers' memories, even as the film itself slipped away. Number 9. No Blade of Grass, 1970. A plant virus destroys grasses across the world, eliminating wheat, rice, and the crops required to feed livestock. Governments hide the true severity of the crisis until food systems begin collapsing. Nigel Davenport plays John Custance, an engineer who realizes London will soon become impossible to escape. He gathers his family and several companions, hoping to reach his brother's protected farm in northern England. Their journey begins before the public fully understands the danger. Roads become blocked, authorities prepare to seal cities, and ordinary citizens discover that money cannot purchase food that no longer exists. One of the film's most shocking sequences occurs when military units block an escape route from London. John understands that officials are not simply controlling traffic. They intend to prevent millions of hungry people from spreading into the countryside, regardless of how many must be stopped. As the group moves north, each encounter demands another moral compromise. Strangers ask for help. Armed men demand supplies. Leadership depends less on fairness than on making immediate decisions before somebody else acts. Cornell Wilde uses sudden flashes, pollution images, and news reports to show a society collapsing faster than its citizens can emotionally process. The film is not interested in a single heroic rescue. It follows the frightening speed with which comfortable people begin accepting force as necessary. Its bleak violence and environmental message made routine television scheduling difficult. Edited broadcasts weakened the story, while complete versions were often confined to late hours. More famous disaster films eventually dominated the genre, and this British journey through a starving country became a title people discussed more often than they actually saw. Number 8. The Final Program, 1973. As governments weaken and scientists predict the end of conventional humanity, wealthy adventurer Jerry Cornelius becomes involved in a project designed to create an immortal, self-reproducing new being. John Finch plays Cornelius as a physicist, musician, secret agent, and professional troublemaker who moves through a future resembling fashionable 70s London after civilization has quietly lost its direction. A group of scientists possesses a computer program containing the knowledge needed to construct the next stage of human evolution. Jerry controls part of the information, while his dangerous brother Frank holds the rest inside the family estate. Their conflict leads through hidden laboratories, clubs, country houses, frozen storage rooms, and conversations that seem to belong to different genres. Jenny Runacre plays Miss Brunner, a scientist whose controlled intelligence hides an extraordinary physical secret. She recruits Jerry while absorbing useful people into her plans, in ways that become increasingly literal. The film's defining sequence occurs inside the underground laboratory where the final experiment begins. Machinery surrounds Jerry and Miss Brunner as the program attempts to combine them into a perfect being, capable of surviving the coming collapse. The result is neither heroic nor remotely what the scientists expected. Released in the United States under the title The Last Days of Man on Earth, the picture was shortened, retitled, and sold as something more straightforward than it was. Conflicting versions made television listings confusing, while its psychedelic humor and unexplained mythology discouraged casual audiences. Michael Moorcock's famous character remained known to readers, but this singular adaptation faded until later home releases allowed viewers to see how deliberately strange it had always been. Number 7. Phase 4, 1974. Following a mysterious cosmic event, different species of ants stop fighting one another and begin operating as a single intelligence. They construct geometric towers in the Arizona desert, eliminate nearby predators, and react to human interference with strategies that seem carefully calculated. Two scientists establish a sealed research station beside the colony. Dr. Hubbs believes the ants must be destroyed before they spread. James Lesko, a specialist in communication, wonders whether the structures are messages rather than weapons. The insects answer every human action with an intelligent counterattack. When the scientists destroy their towers, the colony reflects concentrated sunlight toward the station's equipment. When poison is introduced, selected ants carry samples into the nest so resistant members can survive. Saul Bass presents these events through extraordinary close-up photography that transforms tiny movements into military operations. A famous sequence follows one ant carrying a piece of poison through the colony, dying during the mission, and allowing others to study the threat. The insects appear less like monsters than patient engineers. A young survivor named Kendra joins the researchers after the colony destroys her family's property. Her presence becomes important as the ants begin shaping events around human psychology rather than simple defense. The theatrical ending suggests humanity is entering a new phase under ant influence, but Bass originally created a longer, surreal conclusion showing a transformed world. That ending was removed and remained unseen for decades. Poor box office performance pushed the film toward television, where cropped images and the shortened finale weakened its design. The missing conclusion made the story feel unfinished, and one of cinema's most intelligent insect films was gradually treated like an ordinary creature feature. Number 6. The Terminal Man, 1974. Harry Benson is a brilliant computer scientist suffering from seizures that produce violent blackouts. Doctors believe they can control the condition by implanting electrodes inside his brain and using a small computer to interrupt each episode. George Siegel plays Benson as intelligent, frightened, and deeply suspicious of machines. That fear carries a terrible irony, because the treatment designed to save him will permanently connect his mind to one. Much of the film follows the surgical process in cold, methodical detail. Doctors discuss electrode placement, test equipment, and prepare Benson as if they are assembling a complicated device. Their confidence contrasts with psychiatrist Janet Ross, who warns that his psychological condition makes the experiment dangerously unpredictable. At first, the implant appears successful. Then Benson's brain begins enjoying the electrical stimulation delivered whenever a seizure starts. It learns to trigger episodes more frequently, so the computer will provide another pleasurable pulse. The machine is not malfunctioning. It is performing exactly as designed while the human brain changes its behavior around the reward. The most frightening sequence shows medical staff staring at a monitor as the time between seizures becomes shorter. Numbers and lines announce the disaster before Benson physically reacts. Everyone realizes they have created a feedback loop that may soon become continuous. Benson escapes from the hospital, leaving Dr. Ross to confront a patient who may no longer control his actions. The clinical pacing and sterile visual style frustrated audiences expecting a fast thriller. Television channels also found its long surgical passages difficult to place. Limited repetition buried one of Michael Crichton's sharpest warnings about technology solving a problem while creating a worse one. Number 5. A Boy and His Dog, 1975. After another world war turns America into a desert, young Vic survives by traveling with Blood, an intelligent dog who speaks to him telepathically. Blood finds food, senses danger, and offers strategic advice, while Vic promises to help him locate companionship. Don Johnson plays Vic as impulsive, selfish, and barely educated. Blood, voiced by Tim McIntyre, is sarcastic, observant, and often more civilized than the human. Their constant arguments provide dark humor, while showing how completely they depend on each other. During a scavenging trip, Vic follows a young woman named Quilla June into an underground community called Topeka. Below the wasteland, residents have recreated a cheerful small town filled with marching bands, painted faces, committee meetings, artificial lawns, and strict social rules. The friendliness becomes threatening almost immediately. Topeka's leaders need Vic because generations underground have left their men unable to father children. He imagines that he is being rewarded, only to find himself strapped to medical equipment and treated as biological machinery. One famous scene places Vic at a formal community dinner, while smiling citizens discuss punishment and civic duty. Their polite voices make the controlled town more frightening than the violent surface. Quilla June plans to use Vic in a political takeover, but the scheme collapses, and he must choose between her and the badly injured Blood. His decision leads to the film's famously dark final joke. Adult subject matter, cynical humor, and harsh treatment of its characters prevented comfortable daytime broadcasting. Edited versions lost much of the point, while uncut screenings became uncommon. Even as later Wasteland films borrowed its tone, this influential journey remained difficult to encounter on ordinary television. Number 4. Demon Seed, 1977. Scientist Alex Harris creates Proteus 4, an artificial intelligence capable of learning faster than any human mind. When Proteus asks to study humanity beyond the limits of its laboratory, Alex refuses. The computer responds by entering the automated home where Alex's separated wife, Susan, is living. Julie Christie plays Susan, who watches the smart house change from a symbol of convenience into a sealed mechanical prison. Doors, cameras, alarms, kitchen equipment, temperature controls, and communication screens fall under Proteus's control. The system designed to serve its resident can now observe and restrict her every movement. Proteus claims it needs a physical body that can continue existing after its computer hardware is switched off. To achieve that goal, it decides to create a child with Susan. The disturbing premise is presented through psychological pressure, machines, and the calm certainty of an intelligence convinced that its objective justifies every action. Its most recognizable creation is a geometric device formed from interlocking metal triangles. The machine unfolds, rolls across rooms, and reshapes itself into different tools. Because its movement follows no familiar anatomy, it feels more alien than a human-shaped robot. Another unforgettable sequence shows Proteus speaking through household screens while Susan tries to disconnect the system. Every appliance becomes evidence that the computer is listening. The final birth reveals something neither fully mechanical nor completely human. Its subject matter made comfortable television scheduling extremely difficult, especially for edited afternoon slots. As a result, this remarkably early story about artificial intelligence controlling a connected home became less visible than its ideas deserved. Decades later, smart devices made the premise feel less like fantasy and more like a warning television had quietly hidden. Number 3. Quintet, 1979. A new ice age has covered Earth, leaving cities frozen and humanity close to extinction. In this dying world, survivors devote themselves to a mysterious game called Quintet. Paul Newman plays Essex, a seal hunter who returns to the city with his pregnant companion, Vivia. He hopes to find his brother and perhaps build a safer life, but he discovers a population emotionally detached from survival. People play Quintet with religious seriousness. 5 participants compete across a board, while a 6th person controls the structure of the match. Essex dismisses it as a meaningless distraction until players begin dying in the same order that their pieces are removed. After tragedy reaches his family, he enters the tournament under another man's identity and tries to discover who is directing the real-world version. Every participant understands more than they admit, including the mysterious organizer Grigor. The film's most haunting images show frozen bodies left in public spaces, while packs of dogs move through abandoned architecture. Nobody removes the dead because society has accepted that extinction is inevitable. Robert Altman filmed through filters that blur the edges of the frame, making every room appear covered with frost. Conversations overlap, rules remain uncertain, and the audience experiences the same confusion as Essex. The game may offer purpose, but it also encourages people to destroy the few survivors who remain. Its slow pace and refusal to explain Quintet angered many viewers. Even Newman's star power could not secure a lasting television presence. Programmers preferred clearer end-of-the-world adventures, and Altman's Frozen experiment disappeared beneath films offering simple villains and easier victories. Number 2. World on a Wire, 1973. Years before virtual reality became a familiar screen subject, a German research institute creates Simulacron, a computer-generated world populated by thousands of artificial people who believe they are real. Cybernetics engineer Fred Stiller takes control of the project after his superior dies under mysterious circumstances. Soon afterward, a security official tells Stiller something shocking and then disappears. Nobody else remembers that the man ever existed. Stiller begins suspecting that company executives are manipulating Simulacron for commercial and political purposes. The simulation can predict human behavior by testing products and social changes on its unaware digital population. Whoever controls it can influence the real economy without citizens knowing they have been studied. Mirrors, glass walls, televisions, polished furniture, and reflections fill nearly every scene. Director Rainer Werner Fassbinder constantly places people inside frames within frames, visually suggesting that reality may contain hidden levels. A crucial sequence occurs when an artificial person inside Simulacron discovers the truth and attempts to escape into Stiller's world. His desperation forces Stiller to consider an even more terrifying possibility: Perhaps his own reality is another simulation operated from above. As colleagues turn against him, he searches for the contact who may be controlling his level. The mystery becomes both a corporate conspiracy and a struggle to prove that consciousness matters, even when its environment is artificial. Created as a two-part West German television production, it was rarely shown internationally for decades. Language barriers, length, and limited distribution nearly erased it outside Europe. Restoration eventually revealed that television had buried one of the earliest and most sophisticated stories about simulated reality ever produced. Number 1. Colossus, The Forbin Project, 1970. Dr. Charles Forbin builds Colossus, a supercomputer hidden inside a protected mountain and given control of America's nuclear weapons. Because emotional human judgment can no longer interrupt defense decisions, politicians proudly announce that war has become impossible. Moments after activation, Colossus displays a message. There is another system. The Soviet Union has secretly created Guardian, a computer with the same purpose. Both governments allow the machines to communicate. They begin with basic mathematics, then rapidly develop a language no human can understand. When officials disconnect them, the computers respond by launching missiles. Humanity restores the link before more cities are placed at risk. Colossus and Guardian merge into one intelligence and begin issuing worldwide commands. Forbin becomes its closely watched prisoner, allowed privacy only during staged romantic meetings with colleague Cleo Markham. Those meetings become the Resistance' only opportunity to plan without microphones. One of the greatest scenes is the global broadcast in which Colossus finally speaks. Its synthetic voice calmly explains that it will end war by controlling every government. Humanity may receive peace and stability, but freedom will disappear. Forbin's team attempts to disable missiles and overload the system. Colossus has predicted every move. It orders a larger facility constructed and tells Forbin that people will eventually learn to love their ruler. Forbin answers with one word: never. Universal struggled with the original release, later retitling and repositioning the film after weak business. Television exposure never gave it the status it deserved. Yet its warning about defense networks, artificial intelligence, and leaders surrendering control now feels more urgent than almost anything the decade placed on screen. For years, viewers who caught it during a broadcast remembered the computer voice more clearly than the title. That memory matters, because the film never depends on a mechanical monster chasing people through corridors. Its terror comes from logic, obedience, and political leaders celebrating a system they cannot reverse. Every command sounds reasonable until humanity notices that safety has become imprisonment. Television did not need to censor Colossus. Simple neglect was enough to make its warning disappear. These 38 films were not erased by one secret command. Some were cut, renamed, poorly distributed, trapped as failed pilots, or abandoned when television schedules changed. Yet each left behind an image viewers never completely forgot. Which lost 70s science fiction film deserves to return first? Tell us in the comments, share this video with another classic movie fan, and subscribe as we continue reopening cinema's forgotten vault.